You're listening to Greater Good Radio Hawaii. Please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. Today's guest is Crystal Rose, partner in Bays, Deaver, Lung, Rose, and Baba since 1989. Crystal was recently recognized as PBN's Business Women Leader of the Year for 2005. Crystal, as a female, you deal with so many businessmen.
Mm-hmm.
At what point in your career, or when did you notice in your life that you had the confidence and the know-how to be able to deal with businessmen on the same level?
Well, I've been practicing now about 24 years. When I first started out, there were a few women that were ahead of me that were very huge and great role models for all of us as women. And I don't think I ever felt I couldn't do anything. And that's probably more attributed to my parents and saying, you can do it all. And so I've never had a feeling or never thought I couldn't do something. It was rather how I would do it. And I think that's more of a difference between men and women than I think if you can do it, but how you want to do it.
That brings us to another point then, because a lot of the guests that we've had come on have talked about kind of an inferiority complex from people in Hawaii. For some reason, even if we have the same talent and skills,
mm-hmm.
there's this inferiority complex amongst a lot of people. Have you noticed that? Have you ever had to deal with that?
I think you may feel it as it relates to perhaps when you are on the mainland or dealing with lawyers in New York, or they just will obviously not think that you're of the same caliber than they may be. I never felt that way. I think if you have those kind of thoughts, then you project those thoughts. So you don't want to think it because then it's not true.
At the same time, you grew up in the Big Island.
Yes.
And a lot of people compare the Big Island to Oahu because the pace is so different. They call it Oahu the city, and it's so much faster pace. Was it difficult for you to make the transition? And what's your thoughts on, I guess, people in the business community compared to, Oahu compared to the outer island?
Well, I was born and raised on the Big Island, and I'm very, very proud of it. My grandmother is still there. I go there very often to see her. My family some parts of my family are still there. What I think the Big Island does, and why I think is you get raised with really good values. People there work really hard. They're very honest. They're very responsible. They have a value of community. They understand what that means. And I think those values were important for me when I came to Honolulu and got involved in business, because I knew from the way I was raised that I needed to be involved in the community. It's part of my being. It's part of who I am. And for that, I think the neighbor islands have an advantage. I think unlike, some of Oahu, where there's too much emphasis on getting from A to B, you don't tend to sit back and say what's really important here and how do we accomplish that.
And what's been really amazing is that we've been interviewing a lot of people that grew up in the outer islands, and it's like you folks were in a nut for a little while, a part of your life, and all of a sudden you folks exploded. I mean, there's so many successful people coming from the outer islands, and they're just on fire. It's amazing.
Well, I came to Honolulu when I was 11. I was a boarder at the Kamehameha schools. I was entering the 7th grade. I remember going to Ala Moana and being afraid to get on the escalator because I had never had that experience before. That thing moves, I don't. How is this going to affect my toes, slippers, all of those issues. So what it taught me at a very young age is the world is so big and we need to explore it in as many ways as we can. And even as those of us on Oahu, it's important to get to the mainland, to travel to the world, to see other things, but to hopefully bring back the best of that to Hawaii and make that, incorporate that into our lives.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.